Hi, my name is Ken Lasseson, and I want to go through a new experimental feature which for some people they may find quite nice. The intent of the feature is not to do the usual goal of microbiome prescription, which is to normalize the microbiome, but to be explicit in targeting the bacteria associated with symptoms with a high probability. Now, the technical details I have on the blog site, and what you find is that most studies compare averages between control and the patient group, and do compare sideways. Turns out that that is not the only way of doing it, especially for the microbiome. What you can also do is things like the incidence or the prevalence. For example, the very simple example is the prevalence of autism with of parents who are mathematically inclined are much higher than the incidence with parents who are musically inclined or thespians, actors. So that is prevalence. You can't say, oh, what's the average that you can do? What is the percentage of people on both, the prevalence of it, but you can't really say, okay, give me the average of whatever we're trying to measure. So we do the same thing. It just describes an example where a study was done and they found that healthy and not healthy, there was different prevalence of certain bacteria. Some were far more likely to be seeing, other far less. Like an example, healthy individuals, this particular bacteria is seeing only about 2% of the time. In unhealthy people, it's almost 13% of the time. In other words, 6 times as high. So if you have it, the odds are that you are more likely to have an unhealthy microbiome. So I went through, this case I did with chronic fatigue syndrome, went through, did a couple of different ways, and then went through prevalence. The bottom line was that I ended up, instead of having 78 bacteria, which were significant, I ended up with 137, almost double. And all of this was at probability of 0.005. Most of the time for clinical studies, they publish deeming to have found significance when we are at only 0.05. In other words, this method, I'm going for 10 times greater statistical significance, which particularly with bacteria, to reduce the chance of false positive, I prefer 0.005 is 1 chance out of 200, and generally we're dealing with 800 bacteria, so one would expect 4 false positives to show up. So that gives you a improved situation. So here I have an example of a person. This person has official diagnosis autism, is symptom, and we have an 81% match, which is pretty good for identifying it. We have neurological things suggested, intolerance, etc. Now, the thing is, this person has entered a bunch of symptoms. We could try not going for our normalization, which would be done by just simply just give me a suggestion and we'll go through. But we now have a different way. We look at everybody who have any of the symptoms, they have put them into one basket, put everybody who has none of those symptoms in another basket, and then we do a comparison. Where are the bacteria different at a very, very significant level? And by doing so, we actually, in an interesting way, get around the complexity of having dozens of symptoms involved. And how do you process? Do you process one at a time? Well, actually, this way, we take everything at the same time in combination. And we so far are getting some interesting and probably quite good results. It's a slow method to validate, but let's just see what happens when we click. It's going to take some time. It is calculating for anywhere from 30 seconds to 2 minutes, depending on what you have for data. And now we have the results. And what we have is everything is arranged in a bacterial tree according to whatever things are there. You'll find some will give percentile. Average will give a blank, meaning that we have no value. It wasn't found in the sample. But you see here we have a whole bunch of items. All of these are too low. The fact that they are low is probably statistically significant in terms of the symptoms the person has. Here's the interesting thing is we expect 4, maybe 5 false positives. The number we have now is relatively massive. We have low, low. In some cases we have low and under. Low means that the average is low, and we also find that the incident is underrepresented in what I expected. A few of them we can have things being low, but the person is very high, 97%, but it's this particular species in it, he's low. He's at the 38th percentile. And if that was higher, chances are symptoms would be milder. Other case we have high. Oh, he's at 100th percentile. It's high. That is the characteristic we're looking for. And we go, and if you see something's a high 100%, over is too often, 89%, so we actually want to reduce it because this doesn't occur as often. Think of it this way. Instead of 80% of people having this bacteria, normal people have only 40%. What do we want to do? We want to reduce the amount it has, hopefully so that it will literally disappear. So we want to reduce it as a result. So over and high, we almost behave a similar way. And we go through the list and this. Again, this is for a person with autism. And there's a ton of records we have in there where I know the records are for people with autism because of who have entered it, but they have not annotated the symptoms. If they did, we'll get far better information for autism. So this person, I will directly email and make a request for him to annotate all of the autism samples he's working with there. So it goes through, and now you can actually get suggestions from it. And it will go and not take every bacteria, but take the appropriate ones and come up with suggestions. And we have the usual choices. We could include antibiotics or not. Let's skip that for the moment. And now we just see suggestions. You can get more suggestions or less suggestions. And what we have here is we have here all the symptoms that the person that we are working from, and you see it's a pretty good list of symptoms. And down below we have the things they should be taking and things they should not be taking. For example, inulin is not a suggested, cacao is, other things are. High protein, red meat diet, etc. All those are likely to cause the bacteria shifts or patterns to move the person away from the symptoms they have, not towards a normal microbiome, but away from the bacteria associated with the symptoms. And that's basically it. It's a pretty straightforward process. And we see that the bacteria, we're actually working on 200. Some of the bacteria listed, they will have, if it's too low and he has 0 of it, then it will be included in the list. Even though he has none of them, we will synthetically include it because we are working off the bacteria there, and not everybody has all bacteria. So it's part of the joys of dealing with a interesting concept called prevalence. But it's there, it's ready to roll, and you can go and give it a try and see what it comes up with. It is an interesting way of solving a very complicated problem, and the technical note data here indicates how I determine whether it's high or over-representative, low or under-representative. We're doing 2 measures. One is averages, and the other is prevalence. And prevalence is usually not done, and if it is high prevalence, you actually want to reduce that, deem it to be the same as being a high amount, even if the amount isn't that high, because you want it to occur less often in your person than is happened. And similarly, low are underrepresented, you want to increase it so it occurs more often. So that's the logic. And we have 2 dimensions, we have more bacteria, and you can do any combination of symptoms you want, even if you only have sparse data for a particular symptom, which was not possible before with statistical significance. This way does an interesting end run around everything and comes up with some pretty good suggestions and a pretty elegant solution. Okay, I'll shut up and get this up.